very fascinating, and I think that you will, although you're all tired, have some questions, comments, so I'm opening the floor for questions. Please.
Such a small network. It's about 300, 400 families. They all know each other. They are living in a very small area. They all have relationships in between since a long time. So they don't need to say who they are. Everybody knows who they are. So it's quite fluid in that sense. So there is no need to do that.
I was thinking because in the Romanian case, the Romanian national movement in Transylvania, you have lots of people who are married to one another, but then you have other people who get something, get a prominent politician to be the godfather of their child, and then there's loyalty through that way, and it gets them access to the party, and that kind of thing. And so, and then they themselves have godchildren, and then you get these kind of extended networks down into the village and things like this. And I just wondered if there was if the sort of that is a similar thing, or if it's just through marriage.
In some cases, it really eases the way to good positions. The closer, the faster in a way. But at that moment, no. This is true in the interwar periods where those people are in the good positions in Slovakia, so they can hurry up some careers or stop some other careers depending on their relationships with those guys. It's quite cruel sometimes.
To Luca, I wondered about how much the role of periphery actually plays in the phenomenon you're discussing. First of all, I'll just quickly say, to me, the word periphery doesn't have a meaning. So I'm assuming that the people you're talking about spoke of themselves and their regions as peripheral, and I don't consider the regions you mentioned peripheral. So my question is, that's just me, but my question is any modernization not seen as dysfunctional and superficial by a modernized elite, even in the places that you would not consider peripheral?
No, I mean, I don't agree with you in the first part, but I do completely agree with you on the second part. The issue is like what are then, if you're looking from the perspective of, let's say, literary traditions, or let's say literary philosophical traditions, or historical thought, right? What are then the labels to which you kind of be used to criticize that, right? And here, national technology has a long history, right? You can find it like in the French Enlightenment, of course, talk about it. But then in the former secular period, what I find, I mean, I might be mistaken to me that I just know, let's say similar phenomenon in the core countries, like from where, yeah, okay. Right.
To me, what you described, there's so many thinkers in Germany who speak this.
Well, that's very
Just as an example. So,
in the former secular period.
yeah.
Okay, but that's brilliant. I mean, but my claim was that I just found this to be very specific for that this becomes a central vehicle of criticism in certain countries, and I think what they have in describe them as peripheral. That you said it exists in Germany, sure, it exists in Italy, yes, it exists. Right. But
In England and France too, although I don't know as much about them.
right, but they don't become, I'm not trying to make much of a strong argument here, because I think that what you're saying even confirms much more the thesis that this is then typically a criticism of, let's say, the consequences of modernity. But like in this, let's reframe it from this perspective. In the peripheral part of this tradition, then becomes strongly kind of the critique of a dysfunctional modernization, but dysfunctional in a very different way. Kind of that it doesn't really catch up with a certain model and a certain ideal, and that ideal is not a homegrown ideal, but it's an important ideal, right? So I can understand that you find that I can imagine you can find it in Germany, right, which is not civilization and so on, right? As opposed to the German culture and all this part. This is one difference. And the second difference would be that in some of these peripheral countries, like Slovenia, for example, this actually becomes, the central focus, right? Gets into what is called blue points, blueprints. It becomes, the fourth point of national liberation front. I'm sure that you know about what the Mexican national character is, because this literature in Mexico is so extremely strong, right? And it starts in the 1920s and continues in the 50s, and we all know about it. We're so much familiar with the Mexican national character, but we know you have written about it and what are its representations. So if you say that that's actually a very strong trend in Germany as well, I think that actually explains even further how come that it becomes such a strong theme in these countries, which when I say that they're peripheral, and what I mean is that they live in a certain sort of very consciously real, but also like conscious state of dependence, which is both cultural dependence and economic dependence towards an external core, which is very difficult to study, which is very difficult to compare themselves, which is a place where they constantly measure themselves against it. And when they start, reflecting on why, this reflection is so screwed, so comical, they come up with this literary trope. Even important for the West as well. That's even more, of course they do that, but I would have supposed that they rather take it from an older Western tradition, and they rather take it from, I think they took it from the Spanish, like I said, that kind of creation of everything. But yeah, I'm totally not surprised if in like Fonseca it comes to Germany. Just recognize it.
I have a question both for Croatian board. So I think both of you missed one important part in the whole late 19th century, early 20th century. So, for example, the beginning of statistics, what you call the imperial state building. I think there is imperial state buildings in plural. So, before the compromise, there was this like Austrian imperial state building, and then afterwards there was also Hungarian imperial state building in Croatia. And for example, although it was not a very popular project, the project of Slavonian was during Cleveland, and it was part of the political struggle between Hungarian elites, Croatian elites, Serbian elites, and what they wanted to create the Slavonian elite. And also I think this is when we come to the third question. I'm not talking about the general population, but just about the elites. So we should observe these political struggles as a Hungarian project of, having a counterbalance to Croatian political elites by giving more power to the Serbian elites. I mean, you can version of that.
As for the part of statistics or state, especially during the Roman Catholic design, and as because this Serbian National Church autonomy was postulated, but it is a bit artistic that this Serbian Eastern building, Serbian community was just a product of just a Hungarian project. It was more
Okay? Yeah. We have a lot of time, and so if there are any more questions, no call.
Okay, so I'll try to formulate these in a coherent and concise fashion as I will reply. I just had a question also for the pro-act contingent. Yeah, Nico, when I was listening to your paper, I was just thinking about Italy use, what I know from the censuses that were taken in the 20s. And then, of course, much more obviously, there was a attempt to forcibly impose identity in the first half of the 1930s by Alexander Karađorđević during his dictatorship. And I also think of these as abysmal failures. And it seems to me that they were very resistant to this sort of identity creation. So I just wanted you to speculate, or just maybe think a little bit about why some of these kind of top-down ethnicization projects, census projects, are quite productive in creating identifications, and others are not so productive. That kind of makes sense. And my question for Philippe is, when I was listening to it, I was just thinking about the anti-Serb violence immediately after the Sarajevo assassination. And I wondered if you, I had a very simple question, I wondered if you looked at that at all, and if you had, could you tell me a little bit about the anatomy of this violence? I think I read in Mitrovic some years ago when he spoke about Serbia in the First World War. He claimed that this was all orchestrated by the fanatics of the party of the right. And I just wondered if that's true, or if there was some sort of spontaneous violence, and whether that fits into a narrative of contested ethnicities and contested identities.
Well, your question makes perfect sense, but I'm not sure if I'm able to answer it. And I'm sure it is impossible to answer. I'm sure there are general answers to that question. As far as this topic is concerned, there is certain internal contradiction in these statistical efforts, because at one hand you try to reach to the census apparatus of the wider population using the ethnonyms Croats or Serbs and so on. And only on the second level, when you have some kind of results, and when intellectuals like these statisticians then interpret this data, they formulate it to the Yugoslav ideology. So you have a discrepancy on the field, and this is where, due to the lack of sources, we cannot reach. But there is an internal contradiction with this whole effort. And maybe this is there is some reason in it why these kind of Yugoslav identification never really lit up in the wider population. I'm not sure if that name ever reached very far in this manner, if it ever passed the city walls, so to say.
Yes, I'm going to the elements of violence against citizens in Croatia.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Then I'll say that I'll conclude the last of our panels. We are not finished with our program yet because we have a coffee break now, and then Omar Mosela comes up with his final remarks, which are a kind of feedback to all our discussions, to all the presentations, instantaneous feedback, a challenge, of course, for Gloria, but I think a challenge that he is more than happy and able to meet. But first of all, again, let me thank the last four presenters.